December 14th, 1959. The Green Bay Packers, in their final game, dominated the 49ers in the second half, coming away with a 36-14 victory. Despite the big point differential, things didn't start off looking as though it would be easy, as San Francisco had an early 14-0 lead. The game started with the Pack getting the opening kickoff. However, they weren't able to do anything, so their first drive ended in a punt. It didn't take long for San Francisco to get on the board, just 5 plays in fact. After moving the ball to the Green Bay 46, this was followed by a C.R. Roberts run on a draw play that went the distance. Roberts got the call as their starter, Joe Perry, was nursing an injury. On Green Bay's next drive, McGee hauled in the pass up the middle for 44 yards. However, after taking the ball deep into 49ers territory, Hornung missed a kick from the 25. The 49ers then took over on their own 20. 3 plays later, the ball was on the 32. 49ers quarterback Y.A. Tittle then completed a 40-yard pass to Hugh McElhenny to take it to the 28. 4 plays after that, J.D. Smith ran in from the 5. At least that's what the Green Bay Press-Gazette says. However, Pro Football Reference notes it was from 10 yards out. Which is correct, I'm not sure, but I'm inclined to believe the paper got it right, but it's unclear. Finally, though, things would start to turn around for Green Bay. Starting at their own 22, Carpenter ran for 8, then Starr completed a pass to Dowler for 15. Later, Starr connected with Max McGee to take it to the 13. Hornung then took the ball toward the right, faked a pass, and ran in for the TD. This was followed by each team taking a turn at punting. Then Green Bay got the ball back for one final drive before the half at their own 38. First, Starr passed to Knaffel for 15 yards. With the clock ticking, Starr tossed 2 quick passes to Taylor, who ran out of bounds both times to move the ball 14 yards. With 30 seconds left, Carpenter ran to the right to pick up 11. Starr then found Knaffel for the score with only 14 seconds to go. This score was carried into the third period. The second half opened with disaster for San Francisco, as when they were taking the kickoff, 49er Len Lyles was tackled at the 6. How this run back was so bad, I'm not sure, but perhaps the ball took a weird series of bounces, or maybe the player fumbled or had a hard time picking it up. Regardless, Green Bay now had the momentum, and the Niners were backed up. San Francisco got a little bit of breathing room by moving it to the 10. However, in third down, Bill Forrester got to the line and tackled Y.A. Tittle in the end zone for a safety and the lead. And following that safety, San Francisco, of course, had to give the ball to the Packers via kickoff, which Green Bay took to the 34. To open that drive, Carpenter ran for 26. Then Hornung ran to his right and faked another pass before dashing all the way to the 2. Hornung then took it to the left, but lost a yard. Not giving up, he took it again, this time to the right for the score. The 49ers got the ball again, only to turn it over after the Pack picked up a Tittle pass and took it to the 49ers 18. Hornung then rushed for 8 yards. A mix-up and a handoff ended up with Starr taking the ball himself for 3 more. However, Hornung lost 3 on the next attempt. Starr then found Dowler for the TD. Tittle was able to take the ball into Packers territory. However, Roberts fumbled and Jesse Winnington got the recovery and ran 46 yards to the San Francisco 31. A combination of runs by Carpenter and Hornung took it 11 yards. The Packers were able to convert on the 4th down attempt, and the period ended with Green Bay on the 9-yard line. Hornung then took it to the 2. Hornung got it again for the game's final touchdown. However, the extra point was blocked. The Niners then made it all the way to the Packer 10-yard line, but their own 4th down conversion failed. This led to one final drive by Green Bay when they ran out the time in an impressive display of clock management. First, Luke Carpenter ran on a draw play, but lost 3. Then Starr got the yardage back by tossing it to Hornung. On 3rd down, Starr was able to find anyone open and was tackled for no gain. However, a defensive holding penalty led to a 1st down on the 19. Max McGee, presumably on a reverse, then ran for 7. However, there was holding on that play. Starr then threw to Carpenter to take it to the 15. Starr completed a 10-yard pass to take it to the 25. However, the paper didn't say who got the ball. Starr connected with Dialer for 11, and now they were at their own 36 with another first down. Carpenter ran to the left for 3. Horning followed suit by going through the left tackle for 3 more. Starr found McGee for 12, and then Billy Butler got into the action with a run around the right end for 6. Butler then carried to the left for 3 more. Starr ran for 2 on a first down, although it's unclear if this was a design run or a scramble. That took it to the 2-minute warning. Jimmy Taylor ran to the left and out of bounds for a 9-yard gain. Butler got the call again as he ran to the right for 4 more. Taylor then went to the left for 2, and Butler ran to the right for 5. The gun sounded, and the Packers came away with their 4th straight victory. In the David Marinus book, When Pride Still Mattered, the author wrote, "It was during the San Francisco game that Starr had a quarterback's epiphany. He was poised at the line of scrimmage, bent over center waiting for the snap, and as he looked across the line, he read the defense in a nanosecond and changed the play accordingly. What had once seemed rushed and confusing now seemed clear and obvious, as though it were all happening in slow motion. One quick look, and everything that Lombardi had taught him snapped into order. Read and react, freedom within discipline." It was also during the 49ers game that Starr began to assert himself with his teammates, at one point insisting that the guerrillas Max McGee hush up in the huddle. The order had a delayed effect. It seemed so out of character that Jim Ringo called the timeout so that offensive linemen could stop laughing. But from then on, Starr commanded his team's respect. Starr himself would later reflect on that final part of the season. "I was extremely encouraged by my performance in these last 4 games, completing 52 passes and 79 attempts for 699 yards and 6 touchdowns. With each game during a brief winning streak, I gained more confidence in my ability to lead our team. In addition, I could detect that my teammates were beginning to believe in their quarterback for the first time since Tobin Rote was traded." Paul Hornung gave his own thoughts in his autobiography, Golden Boy. "So Bart started the last 4 games, and we won them all to finish 7-5, which tied San Francisco for 3rd in our conference. In the final game of the season, a 36-14 win over the 49ers in Kezar Stadium, I entered the game trailing defending champion Pat Summerall of New York in the scoring race. I scored 3 touchdowns and added 4 extra points to finish with 94 points for the season, highest in the league." Hornung continued, "Under Lombardi, no player thrived more than me. The left halfback spot turned out to be perfect for me, running, throwing, and catching, as well as handling the place kicking. I made the Pro Bowl for the first time and scored a record 13 points, then with a touchdown, a field goal, and 4 extra points. What had gotten into me? After playing under Lombardi for a while, I said after my first season with him, I felt like a new player. He had me concentrating on my position so heavily that I forgot everything else. I even forgot my movie hopes. After a while, with everything going great, I would have wanted to be a movie star if they handed the job to me. There's only one thing I want to be. I want to be the best player in this league." Hornung remarked that despite his more disciplined approach to the game, in the spring of 1960, he had his Kentucky driver's license suspended due to an excessive amount of speeding tickets, so he wasn't staying completely out of trouble. For the game, Bart Starr racked up these numbers: 20 out of 25 for 249 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Lou Carpenter had these stats: 16 carries for 113 yards. Paul Hornung would add this: 15 carries, 83 yards, and 3 TDs. Boyd Dowler would get 6 catches for 61 yards and a score. After the game, as a sign of the changing times, some kids tried to get to the dressing room to get the autograph of San Francisco quarterback Y.E. Tittle. The cop who turned them away reportedly said, "You don't want Tittle's autograph, you want Starr's." Why a police officer in San Francisco would say that isn't clear. Maybe he was a Packers fan, or perhaps he did like the 49ers, but he was so mad at their performance that he threw out that line as an insult. Regardless, people were starting to take notice of Bart Starr. Lombardi said, "He was brilliant, and he just called that game most of the time when he got to the line of scrimmage. He changed signals on the line of scrimmage just about every play. His passing was great. I guess he only had 5 incompletions out of 20. Gary Knafa was also playing cheerleader for his QB. He's my roommate, and I'm his biggest booster right now. He's the best in the league to unite us. And he's getting tough in the huddle too. He tells us to shut up when it's necessary. Starr would be given the game ball, with him noting that it would be his most prized possession. Unfortunately, just as the Packers were getting started, this season had to end. Hank Grimminger lamented, "Why do we have to quit playing now? We're just rolling. Wait till next year." Lombardi summed up his feelings overall. But I certainly am happy with the way the boys came through. As I said last week, this is beyond all expectations. At the end of the year, 5 Packers were named to the Pro Bowl: Paul Hornung, Jim Ringo, Bill Forrester, Forrest Gregg, and Emlyn Tunnell. And the paper noted a welcome home ceremony that would be held when the Packers plane arrived back in Green Bay, although the planned fireworks had to be canceled as the airport nixed the idea due to safety reasons. December 15th. Sports writer Art Daly wanted more information on just why the Packers had such a big turnaround and in just one season. Lombardi gave a generic cliche stating that it was determination and they always had it. But the easy counter to this is each year there are tons of teams that try as hard as they can. Not only do some of them not do well, but they can fail. The actual answer seems to be a combination of a great series of drafts led by Jack Venisi, combined with the offseason trades to bolster the defense, paired with Lombardi running a tight ship full of disciplined players that were very well conditioned during a time this was not the norm, and mixed with his insistence on the plays being ran with an insane level of mechanical precision. Lombardi went on to state, "This has been a satisfactory season and certainly was beyond my expectations. I'd expected to win some games, but I didn't expect to win 7. When the 5-game losing streak was brought up, Lombardi said it was one of those things. Sometimes we played better football in those 5 losses than we did in some of the games we won. The best game we played all season was a loss to Baltimore and Milwaukee." The players gave their own theories. Running back Don McElhaney stated, "It's really Lombardi." Lamar McCann said, "I've never seen a man with such tremendous knowledge of football." Starr said, "We went into games as well prepared and well organized as it was possible to be. Nothing was left to chance." Linebacker Tom Bettis commented that, "Most of us were ready to play another quarter when the game was over. We were hardly breathing hard." Linebacker Dan Curry explained that, "Sure, we were trained fine, but the big thing was psychology. It was sort of understood we tried to do our best, but we'd likely lose. The main thing was to come close. Not with Vince. We were trained to win. The whole psychology was aimed that way. We got confidence and spirit, and we did win." And speaking of Baltimore, it was noted they would be meeting the New York Giants for a rematch of the 1958 NFL Championship game. On the return trip home from San Francisco, 7,500 fans waited in the freezing rain for the Packers plane to touch down. Due to the conditions in the air, the arrival was delayed for an hour and 5 minutes. Packers pilot Bud Smith joked that if it didn't clear up, that we'll just stop in Milwaukee, refuel, and fly on to Bermuda. After landing, the plane came to rest next to a stage where the St. Norbert College band was waiting. They played Hell, Hell, the Gang's All Here, as right tackle Forrest Gregg, who had just been named to the Pro Bowl, stepped out. The band then switched to There'll Be a Hot Time in the Old Town Tonight. As the song faded, Vince Lombardi, the man of the hour, appeared at the door with his wife. The crowd erupted in cheers that surpassed anything before. Green Bay Mayor Roman Dennison presented him with a key to the city and said, "I want to congratulate the Packers and particularly Coach Lombardi. They certainly made our job easy for us. They sold Green Bay all over the country." In his autobiography, Jerry Kramer wrote, "The Minutemen, a local civic group, gave each of us a billfold with a $50 bill in it and a green and gold Packer blanket with our name on it. This one is Forrest Gregg's, and you can see they used only one R in Forrest, thus misspelling his name, but close enough." Afterward, the coach addressed the fans. "I know from the size of this crowd that you must all be as proud of this football team as we all are who are connected with it. This was a team which had a great determination and went down to defeat the hard way, and every man in this 36-man squad made a great contribution to the season. They never quit. They came back and kept coming back when things got tough in the middle of the season, but we finished up in a strong way. I would also like to say right now that I have the finest staff in the National Football League. Any accolades at all belong to them and not to me. Thank you ever so much. Line coach Bill Austin said, "It certainly was a pleasure to work with the type of boys we had this year, and I hope we can do as well next season." Defensive backs coach Norb Hecker stated, "I think we had a real fine year, and it's nice to be home." Offensive backfield coach Red Cochran echoed other sentiments. "It's great to be with a winner, and great to be back home." Defensive coordinator Phil Bingston was asked how his team fared against the New York Giants defense, who had finished the year at number 1. "We don't have to take a back seat to anybody with our defensive unit. It stacks up with the best in the league." And what did the actual numbers say? Well, in a league with 12 ball clubs, the Packers gave up the third fewest yards. However, they were at number 6 in terms of points allowed. However, it should be noted that their 5-game slide in the middle of the season put the numbers off kilter. When looking at their final 4 games, they had 15 turnovers while holding all but one team to under 20 points. Jack Vanisi looked at the past, saying, "We learned a lot of humility in the last few years. It's great to be with a winner." All this fanfare occurring despite the team finishing only 3rd in the West made the players wonder what would happen if they actually captured a championship. Max McGee joked they'd probably give them the town. And Ray Nitschke went up to sports writer Lee Rimmel and made a bold prediction. "We got the greatest football team in America right now. And you want to know something else? We're going to win the championship next year, and I'll be in there all the way. They won't be able to keep me on the bench." And as a sign of this era, it was noted that both Boyd Dowler and Hank Grimminger were to report for mandatory military service from January to July, but they would be let out just in time for the football season. And here we can see Lombardi greeting his daughter Susan, who was by now 14. And Vice President Richard Nixon released a statement congratulating the team. It might seem odd that a vice president who wasn't from Wisconsin would be sending regards to a team that finished 3rd in the West, but he evidently was a bit of a fan of the Packers, as he had attended the opening day ceremony for New City Stadium back in 1957. In this address, Nixon said, "I wish you would express to the Green Bay Packer players and organization my congratulations on their victory Sunday and my admiration of the great comeback ability which they have displayed throughout the season often, I must reluctantly admit, at the expense of teams from our own state, California. Your entire community should be very proud not only of your fine football team, but also of your own spirit, which has infused such vitality in the Packers. With every good wish for the holiday season, sincerely, Dick Nixon." December 16th. Lombardi got back to his office desk on Tuesday, where a mountain of papers met him. First on the agenda was to pass out the final paychecks for 1959, along with having a private talk with each player individually. The office was full of people coming and going throughout the day. Most of the players would be leaving town to go back to their homes, scattered across the country, although it was noted that Joe Francis and Jerry Kramer intended to stay in the area in order to find jobs. In the book Mean on Sunday, Ray Nitschke summed up his feelings not just on the team, but on Green Bay in general. "We had a much better season in 1959 than in 1958. We won 7 games, 6 more than under McLean. I couldn't feel I contributed much to the improvement, but somehow I felt I'd finally found a home. When the season ended, a lot of players caught the first plane out of town, but I decided to stay in Green Bay. I'd always considered myself a big city boy, but now I didn't want to go back to the big city. Other than my brother, who had their own lives to live, I didn't have anything to go back to there. As long as I was making my living in Green Bay, I decided I might as well settle there. It wasn't that far from Chicago if I wanted to visit, and it was a pleasant area, nice people, the whole bit. I decided I was going to be a small-town boy, and I've never regretted it." For the final regular season stats, the paper listed these players as being in the top spot for their positions. Jim Brown of the Cleveland Browns captured the NFL rushing title with 1,329 yards with a 4.6 yards per carry average, and again, this was in just 12 games. In a modern 17-game season, this would round up to the equivalent of 1,883 yards. Raymond Berry of the Baltimore Colts was the leading receiver with 66 catches for 959 yards and 14 touchdowns. Today, that would equate to roughly 94 catches with about 20 touchdowns. And quarterbacks in this time period were not judged in a rating system. Instead, they went by yards per attempt, and Charlie Connerly of the New York Giants achieved this with an 8.79-yard average. And as mentioned earlier, Paul Hornung was the scoring champion. December 18th, the Packers' defense had improved significantly, allowing 136 fewer points than in 1958, and it's important to note that this number was skewed by their losing streak. If the games against the Colts and the Rams were excluded, their average points allowed per game would be 16.3. This was the best defensive performance by the Pack since 1947, and Lombardi had achieved it in only his first year. December 21st. Green Bay's remarkable turnaround ranked second among the top Wisconsin sports stories of the year. The first spot went to Wisconsin's college football team, which won its first undisputed Big Ten championship since 1915. December 22nd. Lombardi won the Coach of the Year award in an Associated Press poll, getting 29 out of 37 votes. His offseason trades had strengthened the defense, which was a key factor in the team's turnaround and success. He was visiting his parents in New York when he heard the news. While there, he also appeared in Frank Gifford's It's Sports Time radio show. Gifford introduced his guest by stating that he had helmed the best reclamation project since the raising of the Normandy. During the broadcast, Lombardi said the Packers hadn't reached the top just yet. But in one quality, there are few like it. We have great determination, and in Bart Starr, we're going to have one of the great quarterbacks in football. In fact, Frank, with what we've already shown, it makes me want to look forward to next season. However, when Lombardi returned to Wisconsin, not everyone was treating him like a legend. Author David Marinis again documents this time period. When he got back to Green Bay, Ruth McCloskey, his secretary, noted a certain bounce in his step as he strutted around the office smiling broadly when someone mentioned the honor. Then Marie dropped by and decided that he seemed a little too proud of himself. You may be Coach of the Year to everybody else, she said, but you're still just Vince Lombardi to me. McCloskey remembered, boy, he didn't like that because she said it in front of us. He didn't say anything, but he got in his office and you could just tell. December 23rd. Packers center Jim Ringo made the All-Pro team, while Forrest Gregg, Paul Hornung, and Bill Forrester were on the second team. Some might argue that these players deserved higher honors, but they had to overcome the stigma of Green Bay's dismal record the year before when they had won only one game. This year, they had improved to third place in the West, but it would take more than one season for their teammates to earn their full recognition. And Lombardi gave more thoughts on his club. I don't know whether it will show up in the won and lost column. We synced up on a few of the teams in the beginning. The Packers won their first 3 games, and now they'll be ready for us. We got to be a better club because we're a young club. Our team was the youngest in the league, averaging 24 years. Our offensive line, with the exception of center Jim Ringo, was made up of second-year men. The offensive backfield was young, and we saw their most pressing problem. That was teaching a new system. It took time to do this. We won't have to spend as much time on it next year. That's a great advantage. We've got to be better off. He continued talking about determination as being a key factor to the team. I know it sounds a little corny, but that's the way it was. We had no great players. Everyone put out. Now, did Lombardi actually believe he had no players who were truly great? I don't think so. I believe his phrasing was just the result of an off-the-cuff comment. However, a team can be greater than the sum of its parts through hustle and effort, and I think that's what he was getting at. December 24th. Art Daly shared a conversation he had with Reverend Thomas Moore last November at Yankee Stadium. Moore was the athletic counselor at St. Cecilia High, where Lombardi got his first head coaching job. Daly spoke with Moore an hour before the Packers faced the Giants, knowing that as Moore was a friend and former colleague of Lombardi, he could provide some special insight. The first question was whether or not he thought Lombardi could make it as a head coach in the league. This led to Moore looking around to make sure Lombardi wasn't listening. He then said, he'll be a success out in Green Bay, just as he would be in any endeavor, and I'll tell you why. He has a wonderful natural ability to command respect from everyone he meets, and he's a good man. We can't forget that. And what a fine teacher. He could teach anything: physics, chemistry, history, English, and we'd send pupils to him with their problems. He looked over the locker room and added, "I'll bet these boys really respect Vinny." December 26. At 12:30 p.m., it was reported that just prior to the start of the 1959 NFL Championship match between the New York Giants and the Baltimore Colts, Vince Lombardi, along with Steelers coach Buddy Parker, would be interviewed in a nationally televised pregame segment, which would air on Channel 5. December 29th. Boyd Dowler was named as a Rookie of the Year, where he received 14 votes from the Associated Press. In second place was Bill Stacy of the Chicago Cardinals, who got 7. Remember how I mentioned the Sporting News disagreed and gave Nick Petrosante Rookie of the Year honors? Well, the AP gave him only 1 single vote. So when I said that some disagree with Dowler and wanted Petrosante, evidently it was just one person, at least in this example. Lombardi talked up his young rookie. Boyd was a real blazer at the end of the season. He has all the tools to be a great one: size, speed, hands, and the one thing you must have, desire. After winning the award, Dowler said, "I'm thrilled and surprised. I want to give this tribute to the Packers as a whole, and particularly to Vince Lombardi, the coach. We'll be in the championship race next year." December 31st. On the very last day of the year, the paper highlighted all the major news stories from the past 12 months. Of course, the Packers were one of the top items, but to give a more complete picture of this time period, here's a short summary of some of the other things mentioned, not just involving sports, but life in general. In the center of the page, you have a list of people who made local news, like Pauline Peters, who on January 2nd, 1959, was the first person in town to pay their property tax. Yeah, the newspaper decided to report that for some reason. Let it never be said that this YouTube channel doesn't give sports fans the information they really crave, such as the first and last name of the woman who was the first person to pay property taxes in Green Bay in 1959. The paper also mentioned some of the local citizens who had passed away after recently turning 100. This is a reminder that in this time period, there are still people walking around who were born before the Civil War. Lombardi's son, Vince Jr., who played high school football following in his father's footsteps, was named to the All-State Catholic High second team, and it listed the passing of Frank Flatley, who was the last surviving member of Green Bay's first ever football team, and he can be seen here on the far left in a team photo dating back to 1897. More unusual events were discussed, such as the first recorded tornado in Green Bay's history. It struck down on May 10th at 10 p.m., injuring 3 people, but causing no fatalities. The year also marked the introduction of a 7-digit telephone system on December 6th. Different parts of America adopted this system at different times, but Green Bay only started using it after Lombardi was hired, thus showing once again just how long ago this was. Ron Kramer was working out with the Detroit Pistons in hopes of making the team. For those not aware, Kramer was actually selected by the Pistons back in 1957 as the 34th overall pick of the NBA draft, as he had made a name for himself not just in football, but also in that sport. However, this wasn't to be. Kramer would wind up sticking with the NFL, where he would become the team's starting tight end by supplanting Gary Knaffel. Now, do you recall when I said Lombardi had gone to New York after the 1959 season ended? Apparently, while on that same trip, Giants owner Wellington Mara broached the subject of Lombardi returning to their organization to take over as their new head coach. You see, Jim Lee Howe felt some burnout and wanted to hang it all up, and Lombardi seemed to be the logical choice. In the book, Vince, a personal biography, author Michael O'Brien summarized these behind-the-scenes motions. After the Packers executive committee learned of the negotiations, some members were livid because Wellington had not followed protocol and sought permission to talk to Vince, permission Wellington thought he had secured a year earlier in his conversation with Alnichek and Trowbridge. Vince was unaware of the permission rule or had chosen to ignore it. The Packers reluctantly had granted Vince permission to continue his discussions, but Olenicek warned him that just because we're letting you talk to him doesn't mean we'll let you go. I doubt like hell we will. Vince's decision was painful, partly because the negotiations occurred during the Christmas season when he and Marie longed to return to New York, but since the Packers might not release him from his contract, and since he had made a commitment, he asked Wellington to hold the job open for him until after the 1960 season. Mara agreed and convinced Hal to stay on for another year. If he'd given him her blessing, Olenicek later stated, he'd have gone to New York, I'm sure of it. As compensation for his great season and his decision to remain, the Packers gave him a $10,000 bonus. Delighted, he rushed out and bought Marie a mink coat. Regardless of how precisely everything went down, Lombardi would not be returning to New York, but be that as it may, bigger and better things were around the corner for him and the Packers. So we've done it. We have completed our detailed coverage of the 1959 season. I plan to do this for every year in the Lombardi era, so stay tuned for part 1 of the 1960 season. But I also want this to be a channel of football history in general and not just for one team, so my next video will be on the Dallas Cowboys 1961 season. However, since these videos were more popular than I expected, I decided to alternate between the Cowboys and Packers, so after my Cowboys video, in the following week, I'll return to the Packers. That way, at a bare minimum, you'll still get 2 Packer videos a month with this back and forth approach. And since the newspaper accounts that I've seen on the Dallas Cowboys in 1961 are not as extensive as the ones for the Packers, that will make it a much shorter documentary, so we're going to get back to at least 4 Packer videos a month sooner rather than later. So I'll see you next week with a Dallas Cowboys video, and in 2 weeks we'll return to the Packers and the start of the 1960 offseason. See you next time.